Hi there, and welcome back to the Hub of Junior Golf Podcast. I'm Ryan Bird, joined as always by the founder of the Junior Golf Hub, Roger Nick. And what a special guest we have on this episode as we welcome in the head coach of Penn, the men's golf team in the Ivy League, Coach White. Coach, thanks so much for joining Roger and I today. Obviously, busy time of year for you. Catch us up to date a little bit on the Quakers and the early golf season.
Yeah, so we've played in 3 events, and we've finished 6th at the Alex Lagwitz, which is hosted by Colgate, 2nd at Temple, and then we just got back from Maidstone on Tuesday night, which was a great event. Played at a top, I think Maidstone's top 50 maybe.
Oh yeah.
But I don't know if you guys were following it. We had some crazy weather the first day. Definitely our strongest field. We had, I think, 5 SEC and ACC teams there. So I think it was Wake, Ole Miss, Virginia, Arkansas.
Some big boys.
Yeah, I can't remember the other one. And then kind of the other Ivies were Harvard, Yale, Princeton. So yeah, it was a great event. We actually had fall break, so we were able to go out a little early. And we played Maidstone a couple times before that, and also got on Sabonic. So it was a great trip. It was almost like another spring break for us. So
yeah,
it was awesome.
And you got on Sabonic. I mean,
Not a big deal. I'm only on the top, 2 courses in the top 25. That's all. It's not a bad weekend, if you will.
Yeah. No, it's a great trip. Actually, one of our players, George Rossler, his family have a house out there, so they host us. So it's really nice. We stay there with them at their residence, and they do a great job. Hospitality is awesome. I've been very fortunate in my career to be going to a lot of great events, but this has definitely turned into one of my favorite ones. So.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, Maidstone's a great golf course. I love playing there. You get the wind up. It can be really difficult, and it looked like it actually played pretty challenging for everyone. So,
yeah, it did. I mean, it did die down a little bit in the afternoon the first day, and some teams took some real good advantage of that. And then it popped up, the last day, but then kind of settled down. And it was kind of more. We had a delay, so we played about, I want to say maybe 27-ish holes that first day. So a couple teams had 7 or 8 holes left to play on Tuesday. So it made for a long travel home day. But yeah, great experience. So.
Got it. Coach, we got to put you on the spot here. We just had some obviously breaking news, as you know, with the NLI, NCAA kind of getting rid of that this year and going into paying out $2.8 billion to former players and athletes of the past. That's got to be kind of a wake up for the NCAA and all these young college players and coaches, as now business has changed. Give us a little bit of perspective from your point of view of what this means.
Yeah, listen, I'm kind of torn between whether or not athletes should get paid and whether they shouldn't get paid. I kind of blame ourselves, honestly, the coaches. Maybe not golf coaches so much, but the basketball and football coaches, they're making $5 million a year, $10 million a year, and it's kind of like. Everybody knows with social media, everybody knows what they're making, and it's out there. And then, you get kids signing a napkin for $150 and they get in trouble and they get suspended for 2 games. And to me, there's got to be some kind of a balance. I don't think what we have going right now is sustainable. To be perfectly honest, I think honestly, that's one of the reasons why I came to the Ivy League, and I think the Ivy League has a little bit of shelter. Obviously it's going to probably trickle down. It's trickling down to us a little slower. But, I mean, at the basketball, football level, I think teams are coming in and kind of nabbing some kids. We lost our best basketball player to St. John's. And, so college athletics really has a lot of work to do ahead. I personally don't think it's sustainable. in the current format. So I don't know if that's answering your question or not, but
well, it's definitely not sustainable.
Yeah.
The toothpaste has been squeezed all the way out.
mhm.
What the format is now for everyone is bad, except I guess you can make an argument that it's good for the student athlete because there are a lot of millionaires being made daily. Which, but name, image, and likeness was thrown around not as free agency. And
Yes,
it's free agency. Like, don't be confused. The kid's not making money because his shirt is being sold in the bookstore. And that was always what it was.
Yeah.
It was always, well, Tim Tebow's shirt's being sold and he should get some of that shirt sale.
yeah.
Okay, if that's what it was, that would be great.
Yeah.
Calling Penn, and you have a guy that, in the fall semester. Now, like you said, the Ivies are in a good spot because there's a really good chance there that if one of your golfers left Penn to go to a Power 5 school, in the long run,
like
that
Power
decision
3, right?
would lose them money.
Yeah, right.
In the
right.
long,
It's a Power 3 or 4 now,
yeah,
right?
Power 3 or 4, exactly. Yeah, good point. So I agree. There is a shelter in the Ivy. Like if you're leaving Penn to go play at an SEC or ACC school or Big 12 or Big 10, like you said, unless they're like 100% going to make the tour, that decision would cost them money in the long run, not having it come from Penn.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
I agree. You are in a better spot. I just left a college event where a kid at a non-Power 3-4 was the best player there and beating guys that are top 25 on PGA Tour U, and he's a sophomore. And we all looked at each other and said, there's no way this young man is back at this school next year. He can't afford to do it, and everybody's coming. It was just on national television. He kicked everybody's butt, including some giant names in the game, and there's just no way he goes back. And that's the golf end of it. The money in golf is, okay, Luke Clanton might be making money at Florida State because he top 10s every time he plays on the PGA Tour. But the golf trickle down is, guys are just reaching in and grabbing all the non-Power 3 guys and they're going somewhere, and it's disgusting.
Yeah. But you can't. I think you said earlier, it's hard to blame a kid, and his family for not, it's kind of like I don't know, guys. Like I work at Ivy League school, but I'm not that smart, so it's kind of like,
come on, Coach.
You fit well on the podcast.
Yeah.
It's almost like PGA and Live, right? Like, if the money's there, you should grab it. It's hard to fault guys for grabbing money when it's there. So it's just not what college athletics was meant to be at all, and it's a little disappointing. Like I said, that's probably one of the reasons why I kind of wanted to come to the Ivy League is I just think that we're one of the last conferences that is truly putting students before athletes. Now it's athlete students, almost. And we do, like, we don't play as many tournaments as the rest of Division One, and that's across all of our sports, right? We only play about, I want to say it's like 80% maybe of what the rest of Division One plays because of the academics. And I truly feel like maybe the Patriot League, maybe also kind of in that boat where they're not giving athletic scholarships. But yeah, we need to get back to putting value. We don't put value into a college degree anymore. And to your point earlier, listen, I've always said, even at Seton Hall, I've always said, kids coming to Seton Hall, they're going to make way more money with their degree than with their golf clubs. And yeah, I think kids should still have that dream of making money with their golf clubs. But to feed a family playing golf is pretty difficult.
No doubt. It's a long road for sure. And especially on the women's side. Think about the women's side, well, let alone the men. But coach, let's, and I don't want to go down on this tangent too much because I don't want to get too political here. But the reality is, school and college today, it is a big business. It's not about the academics as much as it used to be, to your point. It is about the business. I mean, schools now have to look at how do they keep heads in beds. I mean, let's
Yeah.
face facts. I mean, that's what it is. And the value of a school degree or college degree has gone down because everybody has one. Everybody gets the trophy, right? Because
Right.
you can get in. And it doesn't mean you can get into any school, but you get into a good school. And there's a value there, or that value has been depreciated, if you will, over time. So athletics are offering that opportunity to get more marketing, get more kids, get more enthusiasm around the campuses. And I think it's actually pretty good to some degree.
Yeah.
As a former Division I athlete myself, and I actually wrote a whole thesis on, should that, college athletes get paid? I believe that they should get paid, but then have to pay tuition, right?
Oh, right.
I think they have some ownership in this whole process, right? So that was kind of my stance back then. I think it still is, in the sense of it's okay to get paid. It's okay to walk around a little coin in your pocket, especially from a poor kid like myself, grew up poor on a farm. I like that idea of having that scholarship money, and what we called it laundry money back then, right? In the
Right.
80s, it was called laundry money, and to do your laundry, not the laundry money.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Absolutely.
but
Good
I,
clarification there.
yeah. So I do believe that it's not a bad thing that the athletes get paid for what they do, and the notoriety they bring into schools, the money they bring into the institutions. For sure, there should be a share program there, right? But I think we all have to realize, and I think in our podcast here is really about the parents, educating the parents on what this whole landscape is about. They also have to realize it is a business.
Yes.
You have a job to do. You have to win. You want to keep your job. You want to move. This may be a stepping stone for you. It might be your career is at stake here when you don't win, golf tournaments, right? Or you don't, advance young men to the next level of their development, if you will, whether that's into business world or the PGA Tour. Your job is at stake here every single day. So I think it's important that the parents understand that you do this job at a level of going, I got to get the best kids here. I got to recruit my butt off to make sure my team is successful and put good people around my players today. And that's very difficult. And I think this whole thing now with the NIL is making it even more difficult for that, right? So there's a lot of things at stake here, for the real stakeholders, you as a coach, the team members that you have, the institution. So there's stakeholders here that are really have to look at this whole thing is, do I want to go to school for a degree, or do I want to go to school to get to the PGA Tour,
Yeah.
PGA Tour?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're 100% right. Is like, but I also think like, in the recruiting process, you really, listen, it's much like golf, right? Like if you start thinking about result and not the process, you get bad results. And recruiting's the same. Kids focus so much on the result of where they're going and not so much on the process, and they skip a few steps, and then they're at a place and they're miserable, right? They were all about the result. Like, I have to go to Division I, I have to go to the Ivy League, I have to go to the Power Fours, or and they miss the process of recruiting. And I think that's why you see a lot of kids in the transfer portal, and you see all these things. Is like there's and it's not always the parents' fault, right? Like or the recruits' fault. It's also like the coaches have to do a good job too, right? And I think sometimes we aren't as transparent as we should be, because we just want to get the best kid, and we want, to your point earlier, we do want to win. We're competitive people. We wouldn't be in this business if we weren't, right? So I think it really boils down to the process of the recruiting, and finding that right fit, and not just looking at the name of the school, or you know, things like that, or that you can tell your friends, oh, I get to go to, I'm going to Power Four conference, or, I think that's where a lot of people have missed in the recruiting is the process.
Let's get into Penn specifically. If we can kind of rapid fire, just go through our process. Obviously, the Hub of Junior Golf. We are the podcast of record in the junior golf world. Certainly since Roger and I started doing this podcast, Coach, even the recruiting game for junior golfers has massively changed because of the portal. So let's just start, like I said, kind of rapid fire with an Ivy League school like Penn. Are there scholarships for golfers, or is that off the table right from the get-go because you're an Ivy League?
Yeah, right from the get-go. There's no scholarships whatsoever. Not even merit scholarships. So we're all in need. I think they call it need blind financial aid. So if your family can't afford to pay the tuition, then they pay it for you. And it doesn't matter if you're number one in your class or 50th in your class. If you come from a resources they can't afford, then you get financial aid. So yeah, no scholarships.
That means if you're the number one golfer in the country, but you come from a family of means, you don't get anything to go to Penn.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so let's double up on that now. So certainly, there is a certain kind of athlete, golfer, student that Penn is immediately looking at. You just mentioned the schedule you played. You're going against big boys without the same resources in. I mean, if you're the number one player in the country and you want to go to Virginia, you're Ben James, you get a full ride to go to Virginia. That's just how Power 3, 4 works, right?
Yeah. And probably some additional money now.
So how do you compete, Coach? What is your philosophy to be able to compete at that level without being able to call a kid and say, we'd like to offer you a scholarship?
Yeah, I mean, the brand of Penn and all the Ivy Leagues obviously is huge, and I don't, again, I hate to compare Seton Hall and Penn, but like when I was at Seton Hall, like I never talked to a top 50 kid from the class or even overall. At Penn, like they reach out to me now, and it's like it has nothing to do with that Seton Hall coach is there now. It's more it's the brand of Penn, and most of them are interested in the number one business school. We do have the number one business school in the country, so Wharton has a great name. But listen, I think all the Ivies, the Ivy brand is so strong, and it's not necessarily about the sports program. It's the network that you have access to is unreal. Like I've been here now, I guess, just over 2 years, and the network that we have at Penn and in general, the Ivy League in itself is just unbelievable. So,
Roger, I'll pass this to you. So certainly, Junior Golf Hub has a ranking system now, obviously JGR. And Coach talked about a top 50 player. So let's just take a top 50 player. And this is a question for you, Roger. You can throw it to Coach from there. But you take a top 50 player in your class. So in the United States, you're a top 50 player in 2024. You just graduated high school in May or June. You're a top 50 player. What do you think the percentage, Roger, of top 50 players from each class spending more than 5 years on the PGA Tour is?
Oh, wow. That's a great question, Ryan. It's
under 1.0.
What's that?
Under 0.5, 0.05?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the numbers pan out that it's less than, it's less than 1%, right? So, I mean, it's less than a year. I mean, it's not much.
So you mentioned that this is what I found really interesting. You mentioned how many kids in the top 50 are only interested in putting the Power 4 name on their golf bag, whether it's the right choice or not, compared to if a parent and a student were smart enough and had a family meeting where you said, son, so you know the numbers, it's 0.003 of the top 50 that make it onto the PGA Tour. You are 40th. That percentage as the 40th ranked high school player in just your class goes down even to 0.0002. However, if you go to an Ivy League school, and I don't want to say, Coach, because this is my question, does a player give up their dream because they are mature enough to understand that that dream was really only a dream and they should take college for the degree more so than the avenue to the tour? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Personally, again, I've been around college athletics for a long time, and like, there's no guarantees, right? Professional athletes come from everywhere, right? Especially professional golfers. So yes, you might be a few years behind if you come to an Ivy League school as far as like the resources and the practice facilities and those kind of things that you might see at like a Wake Forest or one of those schools, or a Vandy or something like that. But I always feel like, what's the average age of a rookie on the PGA Tour?
28.
Right? You should look at that too, because there's like, Luke Glenn and the PGAU has helped streamline the thing, but I don't know that answer. I'm gonna guess it's like probably 27, 28, maybe even
Yeah, I just
maybe
looked
even
it up.
higher.
It's 27 and a half is the average age. Yeah. To your point, Ryan, 28.
Yeah. So like for me, it's kind of like, there's very few kids that come to college and then walk straight out on the PGA Tour, right? There's about 4 or 5 years. So I think kids need to realize, like, yeah, so now if you come to a academic institution, now maybe it takes you 30 or 32 years, maybe that's your window now, and again, for me, it's like, when I was at Seton Hall, like, I never recruited against the Ivy League, right? I never recruited against the military academies either.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, if you have the opportunity to go to one of these schools, like, why? And not just because it's Seton Hall, but why are you talking to any other school, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you can get that education, like, why you shouldn't be talking to me, right? You should be talking to these schools.
Coach, I don't mean to cut you off, but I 100% agree. We tell that, I have a junior golf academy as well. And I said, you know what, get your academics in order first and foremost. The golf ball doesn't care where you go to school to play. You can still get good anywhere you go, right? If you really want to do this, you can get good anywhere you go. And if you're actually one of the top players, why not go to the best school you can go? And if that's important to you, then go to the best school you can go to, get your education, and continue your practicing, continue your development, because you're going to go there and play. Most likely, you're going to be the top 1 or 2 players on the team,
right?
Versus going to a power 4 now, power 4 team now, and you might get a chance to qualify.
Right. And listen, like, if you're trying to play professional golf, like, the only training for professional golf is competing.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know too many kids that stay home and then walk out onto the PGA Tour. The guys that are walking out onto the PGA Tour, they're climbing in the van and they're going to compete and they're playing every week, right? So I think kids miss out on that. So, I mean, listen, like, there are some Division III schools, right, that will beat Division I schools, and they actually have a better schedule and they play against some good competition like that. So again, for me, like, the process is so important when you're recruiting. Is like, what your goals have to be in line, but you can come and play if you're good enough. If you're good enough to play on the PGA Tour, you could go to any school and still play on the PGA Tour, right? Like,
that's it.
And we see it.
Hey, Coach. So while we have you, you've had a lot of success in your career as a coach, Seton Hall, now going to U Penn and bringing in some good players. What's the secret? What do you do? How are your players? How are you continually develop these young athletes as they're coming in and playing for you?
Yeah, I don't know if you guys know much about my background, but I was not a golfer. Like I did not play competitive golf. I was actually an equipment manager.
Yeah.
And, I came through that. I love golf. I've played golf and I understand it. But honestly, like, I just try to develop the young men outside of golf, right? I really feel like if they can handle the academics and they can kind of understand that if you have things in order outside of golf, your golf is going to be much better.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, it's about developing the whole person. And, I've seen a lot, like, I've seen a lot of kids make a lot of mistakes when they're playing golf. So, I try to correct them that way as well. But for me, it's been always about developing the whole person and, not necessarily, listen, all these kids have their swing coaches and they have their mechanics. And, yeah, I think, we played a lot with St. John's when I was at Seton Hall. So, I got to see Keegan Bradley and, you get to see not just your players, but you get to see a lot of players and you get to see how they play the game. Right. And then you just try to pass that on to the kids that you have. And, that's how I've always kind of developed kids. And also, you try to get kids into your program that can help other kids too, right? Like a lot of at Seton Hall, like a lot of kids would help each other and they would develop each other really. So, this weekend I actually walked with Wesley, his first round, and, I think I actually overcoached him, during the tournament. And, so I think there's also a part of me that kind of wants kids, they have to make their own mistakes. And, I think they learn faster when through failure almost. And, I think that's another message to parents is, don't worry about letting your kid, like, your kids are going to fail. Like, let them fail. Be there to catch them. Like, I mean, be there to support them, but let them do some things on their own. Let them make some mistakes. Like, I think parents sometimes, think that, oh, we can't have a bad result here. We can't, no one's perfect. Everybody plays bad, right? So I think the parents need to really let kids go a little bit.
Coach, with that said, and you guys have done a great job of selling Penn so far. So let's talk directly to the parents and kids. Penn is very unique. The Ivies are very unique. You play a great schedule. You're very competitive. You have to be obviously over the top competitive in the classroom. My first question for our parents that I know they're asking is this: does being a really good golfer, that's a really good student, that gets along with you and you seem to be the right fit, does golf help them get into Penn?
So, as a coach, I do not admit kids into Penn. So I can't say, okay, I want you on the team, you're in. Like, that's just not how it works. So I don't know if you've seen when kids kind of commit to an Ivy League school, they're committing to the admissions process. So they're not really committing to the golf team. They're committed to, going through the process, and they're treated just like every other student, right? So we can support an application is kind of what we do as coaches is we support application, but there's still a pre-read process.
Sure.
They still have to meet, the requirements. So the support definitely helps in the application process, but again, we're not like at Seton Hall. I could say, hey, I want that kid in, and we could get them in. And especially being a private school, like, there's definitely some flexibility, there. Where at Penn there's no flexibility. If you can't get through the pre-reads, then we basically have a red light, yellow light, green light kind of mentality. That's how pre-reads are kind of done. Is kind of like green light is, hey, this kid's, if he continues to do what he did his first 3 years, so pre-reads are done at the end of your 11th grade.
Right.
Then he's gonna there's a 90, I don't know what the percentage is. It's like 98% chance that he's going to get admitted if he continues on his academic rigor and maintains his academics. And then the yellow is kind of like, well, he's kind of borderline, but if he makes these changes to his schedule during his senior year, we see some improvement, then, most likely he'll get in. And then red light's like, he has a 0 chance of getting through the admissions process. So
that's you and I, Ryan.
Yeah.
Yeah, same. I would be in that. I would be in that boat too. So yeah, it is very different. But supporting the application, I guess, helps.
Sure. Of course it does.
Yeah. So,
Coach, real quick, what's the top three things you're looking for in your recruits?
Yeah, well, now that I'm at Penn, academics is number one.
Okay.
Number two is I really want independent kids, and it's hard. It's really hard to find those kids. What are they doing around the house? What kind of chores are they doing? Do they? One of my 26 kids, his dad just told me, yeah, he's kind of like a latchkey kid. He just does everything on his own, So, I do look for kids that are a little more independent. Because I think, again, when you come to college, no one's picking up after you. No one's waking you up. No one's getting you out of bed. You got to do all this stuff yourself. No one's doing your laundry. So, some of that. And then probably the third is just, are you coachable? Do you have all the answers already? Then why do you need me? Right? And I work camps and there's kids that just have all the answers. And it's kind of like, well, if I can't teach you anything or I can't help you, why do you want to come to Penn? We're trying to get you better, So, and to be honest, I hope I can learn from the kids too, right? Is like, can we have that relationship where we can learn from each other? Because I certainly, with my background, I certainly have learned way more from, players and other coaches than I've learned on my own. So,
last thing from me. Because it's such a unique situation at Penn, and because certainly there are golf rankings where you can see if the junior player is a good enough golfer to play at Penn, but by looking at that, you obviously have no idea if they're red light, yellow light, or green light academically. Because of that process, what percentage would you say, if you end up being recruited to play at Penn, the initiation comes from the family player more than you?
I would say right now it's probably like close to 95%. I really, and maybe I'm not doing it well. Obviously, this is, to be perfectly honest, this is what I did when I was at Seton Hall. Georgetown was a really good team, and Tommy Hunter had always had great teams back when I first started. So then I just tried to mimic Georgetown, right? And I tried to, my kids, I wanted them to be like, Georgetown kids and how they behaved, how they played. And then Marquette came in, and then they were the best. So then I started copying what's Steve Bailey doing, and I do that. So now I'm on to Princeton. I'm gonna, Will Green has got it going over there at Princeton, and it's like, what's he doing, and I'm gonna try to do the same. So, yeah, I think that's, kind of what I've always done is we try to look. I try to kind of mimic what good coaches do, right? So sorry, I don't know if I answered that question very well, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great answer, Coach. I mean, it's very humbling, and I think it takes a lot of confidence to say that. I mean, I think a lot of coaches want to say, "Well, I did it my way," and just because I think there's ego. But I think that's a true, coach is saying, "Hey, I'm trying to provide an environment that's conducive to developing young players and young men that play golf at a very high level," and I think that's awesome and honorable. So thank you for sharing that. My last thing is that I think players and parents really want to understand what do they need to do to stick out so they coach, you say, hey, I want you, and they're ready to go? What are those things?
Yeah, I think it's persistence, like, and again, I'm still kind of learning the process at Penn, but like, you know, I feel like I always say, hey, like, call me. Like, I feel like you get to know people better over a phone call or a Zoom call or a visit than you do through emails and text messages. So I've always said, hey, I'm probably not going to call you. You can call me anytime, right? Like, I kind of limit it to like before like 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, and then
Yeah.
a little. I'm kind of an early person, so you can call me at 6. I'll be up, but I kind of have a little window. But kids are always like wanting to schedule and do this. Like, if you have something to share with me, just call me. Like, I love talking to kids, and I feel like I've been doing this for a long time, and like, I want to help kids too, right? In the recruiting process. Listen, there's 7 men's golf teams in the Ivy League. Like, if we all take about 2 kids, right, every year, that's 14 kids that get to play in the Ivy League golf, right?
Yeah.
14.
Hmm.
And Roger, you probably know this more than I do, but how many junior golfers are there in a class?
It's a lot.
2 to 3,000, and that's just in the United States. And we also go globally, right?
Oh, yeah, you're looking at least 10,000 kids per class, right? I mean, globally.
And 14 are making it.
Yeah.
And 14 are going to have that opportunity. So, listen, like, there were a couple kids that didn't quite have the grades for Penn, but I tried to get them to some other schools, and I know a lot of coaches, and I'm sure most coaches don't like, hey, I got a kid for you. He's not good enough for me, but maybe he can play for you. That's not, for me. That's not what I'm about. It's more about, like, hey, like, I've seen this kid play. I've talked to him. I think he could be a good fit, but don't take my word for it. Call him yourself and go watch him play. And I think we owe it to the game to help kids find opportunities, right? And like, I can't take everything. There's so many great kids out there, right?
Yeah.
And I can't take all of them. So if I can help them and help them in the process, then I'm more than happy to do that. So,
well, Coach, it's no surprise that you've had this incredible run throughout your stops, and we thank you for shedding a lot of light on your program and yourself and the way you go about it. Continued success to you. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me, and thank you guys for what you're doing for college golf and helping young men, because it's all about the opportunities that we can provide, and so you guys are doing a great job. So really appreciate what you guys are doing.
Appreciate it.
Thanks
Thanks
so much, Coach. Talk to
All
you
right,
soon.
thank you.
All
Have
right.
a great day.
All right, you too.
Yep, bye.
Bye.
And Roger, I'll tell you, it's a completely different conversation, obviously, and I think we made that point when you're talking about an Ivy League. But it reminded me of a story that Conrad Ray told me this week. He's playing 3 freshmen for the first time in his incredible career as a national champion coach at Stanford. He's playing 3 freshmen. I said, what's the biggest difference? And he said, well, our last event, we had one of the kids show up, and he shows up to the practice round. He doesn't have socks on. So I said, where's the socks? And he said, I didn't bring any socks. I totally forgot them. Like, well, okay. I guess we're playing without socks this week. And whether it's Division III, Ivy, Stanford, the beauty of this podcast is, from a men's and women's perspective, we've had all of them. So we've talked to Division III coaches that have been successful. We've talked to Conrad, who's been successful with Stanford, obviously Coach White at Penn. And independence is a universal language when it comes to what you're looking for. And we've had some coaches say it's the reason they don't take Americans, or take very few Americans, is because they, through their tenure as a coach, they realize that the learning curve when a kid has never been independent, has never packed a bag, has never got a golf cart out of the trunk, it's just, you're almost going to say that kid's not going to be a help. That kid's probably not going to be able to help my program for at least a full year. I can write off their freshman year as just a learning curve on being independent.
Mm-hmm.
And some coaches don't have that year to be able to give.
I was just going to say they might not even have that year to give, and it's a slight problem, right, for some of the players out there, especially let's call it U.S. kids that are out there playing, and their parents are doing everything. Great message from coach there, and all the coaches, as you just said, is that is a commonality between all of these schools that we've talked to, is independence, being able to advocate for yourself, be able to pick up the phone and give a coach a call. Those are the things that coaches are looking for. If anything they took from this conversation today was that, hey, coach, call me anytime. He basically said, call me anytime. I'd love to talk to you.
And I'm not lecturing parents, because I was a giant culprit of laying out the shirt with a belt, with the shorts, with the socks on the banister the night before a junior tournament. Like, I made all those mistakes. All I'm saying is if this podcast had been available for me, as so many, not a lot of families have the ability that they had a Division I, Division II, Division III junior golfer come before their next son or daughter. So you don't know what you don't know, and you make mistakes. That's life, right? And I made a lot of mistakes that I think a lot of those things come out on this podcast, that if my son was at 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, we had this podcast, and I listened to every single coach say, the less you do for your kid, the more likely they're going to play college golf. Like, how differently parents might start to handle the raising of a junior golfer, just because of, and I don't want to pat ourselves on the back, Roger, but the Hub of Junior Golf is a podcast that does give information that before this podcast, frankly, wasn't available. You didn't hear 75 coaches from men's, women's, Division I, II, III national champions all say the same thing. Like, when they all say the same thing, Raj, I'm like, all right, we need to change. And I'm talking about it. If I had a junior golfer now, I think I'm changing the way I'm going about my business. So maybe in a small kind of way, the Hub of Junior Golf podcast can make kids more independent, because we now have educated parents that, hey guys, that's what every single coach is looking for.
Yeah, no doubt. Michael can attest that I probably wasn't one of those parents that were laying out their clothes, but definitely probably guilty in a lot of ways. But again, learning for our academy kids. I mean, right now at the Golf Performance Center, I go back after every one of these podcasts. I talk to them about the coach that we just had on and what they talked about. Clearly, we show this, or we share this on the Hub of Junior Golf, right? That's a big part of why we do this. But it is so important to hear this and hear it from their own words and the coach's perspective. That is not us, but that these parents and players hear that. And I've gotten so many compliments from the junior golfers who are listening to this and going, I heard, Conrad say this, or I heard this coach say that, or whatever coach it may be. Coach Fields said something about just go out and win tournaments, right? And they were just going out now playing, different tournaments, right, just to go win so they can be recognized. So really, really important.
And as a parent, obviously the reason I did it the wrong way, and the reason thousands of parents do it the wrong way, is because your only interest is your child and trying to make them successful. So at 12 years old, I didn't pack any food. I didn't pack any water. I didn't put the sunscreen on. I didn't check that there were balls in the bag or keys in the bag, or the radar was in the bag. So at 12 years old, you show up at an event and there's no radar. Where is it? I must have left it. Okay, well, you're going to be walking it off on the golf course. Guess what would never happen again?
That's it.
They'll never leave the radar again.
That's right.
No sunscreen. Go out, we get a sunburn. Guess what will never happen again?
That's it.
So at the age of 11, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, if there is a tournament that has a bad result because they had to play barefoot because no one packed the golf shoes, it's something you laugh about down the road. They probably won't play very well, but the lesson will forever be taught.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think I've said this story on here before. I mean, we've got a young man right now who's playing at Pepperdine. What was an All-American at an Ivy League school at Columbia, and he had a major junior tournament coming up at Bethpage, Red, great golf course in the area, New York area. Rain, no umbrella, no golf shoes, no gloves. And his parents panicked and kind of gave me the business, if you will, for not going and getting golf shoes and rain gloves and so forth for him. And by the way, he never left shoes again. He always had an umbrella. He always had rain gloves. He ended up playing pretty well, even under those conditions. But I can tell you, he was very thankful that he learned that lesson early.
Yeah. So another good one. It's not lecturing. It's just when you hear the same thing from the best coaches in the world tell you what they're looking for, some independence. It's you obviously, the parents out there will do the way they want to do it. But it is interesting that coach after coach after coach after coach say the same thing. They're looking for some independence. So we'll leave it at that. Roger, love for us to dig in on the next podcast more about the rules coming from the NCAA. Coach White was ready to go, so obviously we took that right off the bat. But a good one today. Look forward to next week. We're gonna put a few together to get them out as quickly as possible, because we know it is it's a big time for golf as we move into the fall, and we want to get those coaches and players. We got some players coming on the podcast that are extremely successful in the college game, so look forward to that, Roger.
Look forward to that, Ryan. And I want to say kudos to you and Noda for the NB3 Collegiate Classic. I mean, what a great event. Got to watch that the other night, and it looked like everybody was having fun. The golf course held up. It looked like you guys were calling some good matches out there. So congratulations. What a great event you guys put on.
Appreciate that. And it was really cool to see Stanford men and women, Texas men and women, New Mexico State. And, in match play, which we always hear in the U.S., there's not a lot of match play, that, according to the rankings in college, New Mexico State men were by far the number 4, with Texas, Stanford, University of New Mexico, and New Mexico State. And guess who walked away with the trophy, Roger?
I love to hear the underdog story.
Yeah, the Aggies would topple Stanford, Texas, and UNM. So it was from that perspective to see those guys. And I do worry that with that on national television, that there will be some cherry pickers out there, because New Mexico State, those guys showed against some absolute big dogs in college golf that their players could handle themselves. So huge success. Look forward to doing that more. PDI was out there talking with the coaches. After PDI left, had the ability to go talk to all 8 coaches about PDI, Noda and I. They're all in. So the train's leaving the tracks. We're in a good position, Roger, and glad to be able to carry that PDI flag, because it's going to change the way people prepare for golf.
We're super excited, and thanks so much again for the support, and we love the relationship. So thanks so much.
Awesome. All right, for our director and producer Michael Nick, for Roger Nick, I'm Ryan Burr saying until next week, we will see you on the Hub of Junior Golf Podcast.